Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders Podcast, a place where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me as we talk with the best consultants in their niche. Kittie Watson is a consultant and president and founder of Innolect, Inc., where she helps organizations develop leaders, strengthen teams, and transform workplace culture. With decades of experience in executive coaching and communication, she brings a structured approach to navigating complexity and driving measurable change. In this episode, we explore how consulting firms can create lasting impact by focusing on leadership development, listening, and culture transformation. Welcome, Kittie.
Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us more about yourself.
I think what you just introduced says a lot about me. However, I have been a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was in high school, which didn't actually open because of poor partnership. And then I've had several businesses since then. And I think the other thing that's important, because of just thinking about what we're talking about with listening and communication, is that I started as a university professor. I taught at Auburn University and then I was chair of the Department of Communication at Tulane University, and started being invited to work with CEOs to help with their communication skills. And that always led to a focus on adapting to the listener and learning to listen more effectively to employees as executives. And so that background started where I am today with Innolect.
Okay, and how did you transition from the university to being such a great consultant?
Well, I had the business that it was called Spectre Incorporated at the time in New Orleans, and so I was doing both. I was teaching and actually chair of the as chair of the communication department, and started another business there. And so it allowed me to work with students with real world examples when I was teaching. I was allowed to get them internships and do things like that that really helped them learn and grow. And then after a while of building the department and internship programs and things like that, I wasn't growing the same way. And I wanted to have opportunities to do larger projects with a more systems approach. And so I decided to leave my tenure track position and begin Innolect.
And you're a prolific writer as well. You've authored or co-authored 16 books. That's amazing.
Well, you start that way in an academic world of actually writing more textbooks, but then transitioned to more popular writing. And our first book was based on a 2020 episode, ABC's 2020, looking at gender differences in listening. And based on that podcast that was done, or interview, I had St. Martin's Press approach me about writing a book on listening.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Can you tell us more about the book?
The book is a culmination of so many different things, John, in that I was a military brat, grew up in a family where there was a sense of order and expectation of how we would behave. And I was always curious about other families where communication wasn't just one way, it was two-way and interaction. And that led me, when I started my undergraduate and then my graduate degrees, to look at more of nonverbal communication, listening, communication, and that's when I started in the field, just because of my own curiosity. And that book incorporates both professional and personal. It's a blend, looking at the relationships and the key components of that.
Another interesting facet of your personality and your career is Habitat for Humanity. Tell us about your relationship with Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you. Well, in fact, I was just with the board chair or the executive director yesterday, because I am on the board. And that started when I was in New Orleans. and I heard Millard Fuller speak, who is now deceased, but he started Habitat before, people think of Jimmy Carter, but it was really Millard Fuller. And it just touched me. And I saw, especially in New Orleans, the need for people to have the ability to own their own homes and to build equity and to change their lives in a different way. And so that started in the 90s for me, of just being involved and engaged. And right now I'm sponsoring a women's build here in the Carolinas. And so most of the work will be done by teams of women to build this home for a family.
Interesting. That's very interesting. It's very rewarding. God bless you for doing that. That's great work.
Thank you. It's actually wonderful to interact with these families that have already put in a lot of sweat equity by the time they get to have a home. And some people think they don't have a mortgage, but they do. It's just a reasonable mortgage that allows them to build that equity so that they have something for their families and more security. And it is so rewarding, John, to see these families take care of themselves. And in some ways, I wish I had put in all that sweat equity in my own home, because they know what to do to fix things much better than I do. Which is a whole different way of seeing things, isn't it?
Do some of these families actually participate in the building of the homes?
Oh, they have to. In fact, it's required they put in at least 100 hours of time in homes. And they also go through classes for financial management. They go through classes of how to take care of all of the different aspects of their home. So, that's what I mean. They have a much better understanding of what they need to do to create a place that is going to be not require as much repair or maintenance or things like that, because they can do it themselves.
And it must be a bit frustrating because you can't build enough of them, right?
Well, that is a challenge. And so that's why this Women Build I'm a co-chair on it, and I'm raising funds. And in fact, there's an organization that I'm very involved in, which was Women Business Enterprise National Council, as a women-owned business. The president of that and CEO passed away last year. So I'm doing it in honor of her too, kind of a lasting legacy. And that is also getting more people involved and wanting to support the build.
Okay. As a consultant, what specific problem are you helping your clients solve today?
Today is such a fast-paced world, right? And so I sometimes use the metaphor of whitewater rafting, which I enjoy, that you've gone through a class 3 rapid and you think you can celebrate, and all of a sudden you hear the water coming up again. So what's happening is change is happening so rapidly, with not only what we experienced with COVID, what we're seeing with artificial intelligence, what we're seeing with trying to compete more effectively globally, that the changes and restructuring are happening constantly. So what we're really helping people with is not so much the change, but how to transition after the change is decided. Because transition leadership, to me, is what leaders need to be able to navigate effectively, to keep their teams engaged, and to really look toward the future. Adaptive mindset, I think, more than anything. So all of these changes that are happening, the uncertainty, the complexity, what we see globally, all of that is affecting how leaders lead. And some people begin to close in on themselves out of fear. Others will embrace the ambiguity in a different way. So one of our areas of focus is vertical development. And we sometimes look at, and when I was teaching at Tulane, I was really focused on what I would call horizontal development. I was helping people learn skills and techniques and things like that so they could get into graduate school or get their first job. And we still need to learn, just like now we see so many employees learning about AI. However, what we need for the future are individuals that can expand the way they see the world and gain maturity. So we use vertical development, which looks at 7 stages that a leader might go through to help identify where their growth is, where their stage is currently, where their growth edge might be, but also their fallback. And so with many of the leaders we're working with, especially under this complexity, we're seeing many of them fall back to earlier stages where they're wanting to control things, where they're fearful. And yet that's not going to help their organization or them think differently and be flexible. And we, talked about pivoting with when we were in COVID, but I talk about swiveling because it's changing so rapidly that we need to be looking from a bird's eye view. And that's what I think about with vertical development. We zoom out to see a bigger picture. We zoom out to look further ahead. We think about the value of emotional intelligence to understand our teams and what they're going through and try to help them navigate, or what I would say, stay in the raft or the boat rather than falling out.
Kittie, who are your ideal clients?
Well, generally when I think of an ideal client, I think of someone that is mission-minded, that has leaders that are more self-aware, want to grow, see that where their own limitations might be, and truly want to develop their teams. So our ideal clients are usually mid-market to large corporations, many global, and we think about wanting to work with leaders that are decision makers, that have budgets, that have resources, that are able to invest in their talent and invest in the organization to prepare for the future.
How do you find your clients, and what works best for you to consistently attract the right type of engagements?
Mm-hmm. Well, the last couple of years have been challenging. COVID, of course, and even new administration, lots of changes, a lot of uncertainty. And what we find is always the relationships that we've had, the referrals that we have gotten, where people want to, even if they leave an organization, they may take us with them to the next organization because of the strong relationship. In addition to that now, though, we're seeing more organizations not just hiring a firm, they're now being competitive with RFPs, requests for proposals that are different. So we're also building relationships with procurement category managers so that they get to know us and what we do. And as a smaller consulting firm than some of the big 8, we're having to compete with much larger firms. And so what we do is to identify more of our differentiators and what makes us different. For example, 98% of our clients invite us back for additional work, which is pretty remarkable. And
Absolutely.
It's because of the relationships that we've built over time and the community that we've built of consultants, because they hire us for a need or a service, but they keep us because of our people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you think about podcasting as a marketing tool for leadership and consulting firms?
Well, this is a perfect time for you to ask me that today because I guess it was in February, I was invited to be the first external person on an internal procurement podcast. And so,
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, well, procurement organization has their own podcast internally.
Okay.
And so they do this because they're global for all of their procurement people all over the world. Okay. So they invited me to be interviewed, and it was based on a relationship that I had with someone at this company. And it was so well received, John, that the CPO, or the Chief Procurement Officer, sent the podcast to their CFO. And just today, they agreed on with me a contract for me to do work with their senior leadership team. And it was based on that podcast. So that's a great success story of what a podcast can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your thought leadership prevails.
And it was, again, it was on change. It was leading change. and they're going through a lot of transformations, a lot of different things that are happening, and it's just not going as well as they had anticipated for a variety of reasons. And they had been working with a huge consulting firm that just left them with a playbook that just didn't work as well for them. And so we're able to come in and hopefully, we have their attention right now, and this is just a 4-hour workshop to really talk with the senior leadership team about what they're doing and how, and what they might think about with the soft skills of leadership as opposed to just the change itself.
Interesting. When working with large organizations, how do you move from initial conversation to a committed consulting engagement?
Again, it's a journey, isn't it? I mean, it's every relationship that you have or every opportunity that you have can lead to other people seeing or experiencing who we are. And for example, with this pharmaceutical company that I was invited to be on this podcast, I hadn't worked with them before, but I've been meeting with their procurement people and some of their other people for probably 3 years. So it takes time to break through, and it has to be the right opportunity at the right time. And what we find is that we stay in touch. We're committed. We are creative. We listen first to what it is that they need or what they're about, and adjust and adapt. And that's what a smaller firm can do. We can turn very quickly. We can change things very quickly and meet the need in a way that sometimes larger firms cannot.
Where do you find yourself most stuck right now as a consultant, if at all?
I don't feel I feel like there are challenges. I mean, the new administration has created some challenges for some of the culture work that we did, and just work in general, that wasn't about, DEIB. It was really, strategic planning. It was training. It was coaching, things like that, at least in the government space. And that's one of our verticals. I think the challenge is that there's been so much turnover with people, sometimes forced because of what we're seeing with, especially in the tech area, so many people being let go. So relationships that you've built may change. We're also seeing people retire. I call it sometimes the graying of Innolect as we get older, that people retire. And the biggest challenge for myself and the leaders is taking time to really reflect and think. Things are moving so fast. So we need to look at the polarities of go fast and slow down, and how's that come together? Because we really need time to reflect, to think, to recharge, in addition to making things happen.
Do you have a client success story you can share with us?
It depends on what area you want to go in, I guess. But one of our success stories is a client that we've been working with for over 15 years. And that's, I think, what we have long-term clients. And so we want to build internal capacity and capability. So we don't want a client to be dependent on us. So we're building those skills. But they always see other things we can do, particularly with coaching in general. So this one client hired us to be their developmental or vertical development coaching firm. We were brought in because they wanted us to help their leaders see differently. They wanted their leaders to grow in a way that would help them look toward the future. And that was with financial services. We've also had a client for over, 25 years that was in the utility industry. And so again, those success stories are not just doing the same thing. It was working with different parts of the business and being brought in. So to me, those are success stories when one part of the business sees what you do and then wants to bring you into another part. Well, and it's a kind of a series of accidents, though, John, I'll have to say, in that we were building a department. We had broken off from theater and speech to create a department of communication. And I was just in the right place at the right time. Even before I had my Ph.D., I was tapped and then had my Ph.D. and then grew with the department.
And over the years, how have you seen women in consulting progress, evolve?
You know, it's a fascinating. There's so many more women in consulting. Some of it because of on ramps and off ramps for women. You know, women making choices about having families and then wanting to do something different. And there is a sense of any of us can have energy to create what it is as our passion. And I think there are more and more women that really want to make a difference and they want to see the world change. I mean, our vision at Innolect is to better the world by growing leaders and building creative, high-integrity workplaces. So every day, I can really see if I have helped one person or our team and bettered the world that way, to give them a sense of encouragement or build some capabilities for them or help them see something different. And it's the culture that we really are wanting to build so that individuals and employees want to stay, do their best work, and want to contribute in different ways. And that's what I meant by when you asked about the ideal client. For us, it's one that's mission-minded, that they're really purpose-driven, and they want to make a difference.
Looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunity for leadership development and culture transformation over the next few years?
Well, you know, as if I think about that, I think that there's so many things to think about, but I think it's really about helping leaders become more adaptable, helping leaders navigate all the change. I mean, look how much change we've seen in our lifetime. And we can only anticipate there's going to be a lot more, right? And so how do we help people not be frightened by the change, but to embrace it and to begin to help others navigate that more effectively? I think that those individuals who can navigate the transition after change effectively to move to the next one, who can listen effectively to what's going on with their employees, because that's one skill that many people haven't really been taught. And so we look at strategic listening architecture, both qualitative and quantitative. And so, for example, many organizations do have employee surveys and satisfaction surveys. Yet, if people take those surveys and they don't feel as though anyone really understood them or made any changes, then it grows into fatigue, survey fatigue, and people don't really want to participate that anymore. Why do it? And so what we're doing is really thinking about how do leaders demonstrate that they have listened, they understand, and they're acting on what they've heard, or at least communicated why or why not they're acting on a particular, behavior. And then the other is around vertical development. We go through stages, and so when we first come out of college or maybe first job, we want to go into it as an expert. I mean, we know a lot, and yet we don't know very much at all when we're starting out, if we think about it. And then people move to maybe wanting to achieve. They have certain goals that they want to achieve. Maybe they want to be a manager. Maybe they want to have their own business. And yet it's really looking broadly. And I love working with the leaders that see differently, and they want to kind of redefine how things are done and transform things in a way that will make things better for everyone. And we bring everybody up, raise the boat for everyone.
Absolutely. Kittie, if people want to find out more about you and see what you do, learn about you, where should they go?
Our website would probably be the best place, and so that's innolectinc.com. And I'm, of course, Innolect, and personally, I'm on LinkedIn, and so people could reach out to me there. And I would love to have people reach out and just learn more about what we do and to learn more about who they are. We are always looking for good talent that can help support what we're trying to do with clients and organizations.
We're going to put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders. Kittie, wonderful perspectives. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you for inviting me, John. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you learned valuable strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.